Welcome back to Dynasty Savvy. Today we're talking all things training camp, preseason, all our risers and fallers, Dan. We're going to take it away here with Chris Olave. He's got an ADP of 30 right now. He is our first riser. Obviously, that is due to basically the Jordan Tyson, who we'll get to in a moment. He has a hamstring injury. We don't really know the timeline on it yet. What do you think of Chris Olave at his 30 overall ADP? Obviously, he might even rise up a tad bit more than that based off this injury news.
Yeah, I think it's exciting because earlier this offseason, we were kind of fading Chris Olave in Dynasty because we didn't think his value could get any higher. And we didn't think that the end of last season, where he was basically a league winner, was likely to continue this season with all the weapons the Saints added. Of course, the main weapon was Jordan Tyson. So if he's kind of banged up now and has that hamstring issue, which is basically what plagued him in college a bit as well, it definitely makes me think that, okay, maybe Chris Olave could just pick up right where he left off. I mean, especially like early in the season. And I think that is significant because I personally in redraft love to draft players that start the season hot. I mean, that's really just going to change the trajectory of your season. And if you like to trade in redraft, in that scenario, Chris Olave's trade value would really increase, and then you can turn him into something really juicy at that point. So yeah, I think Olave is pretty interesting at that ADP.
Yeah, like right now that would put him at about the 306. So you're basically taking him at the top of that. I would kind of call it, honestly, there's like the big, I would just call it a huge tier from like rounds 1 and 2. I know that like there's obviously like Puka and like Chase and stuff like that, but like you still have like Nico Collins and Neighbors down to the 2-3 turn. So basically you do have to call your shot on Chris Olave at his current ADP already, as the first guy of that massive, second wave. So that's really what I haven't liked about Chris Olave. I have to give myself instant credibility when talking about Chris Olave by saying, "Oh, I'm the Chris Olave truther." But even being like a Chris Olave truther, I will say, I think like I did not like this ADP to begin with. I know all the splits were there, the efficiency, but he's just not been a player that I suppose when I'm clicking a player at 30 overall, I want to feel like I can win my league. Now, I know that, okay, his last 3 or 4 games won you your leagues last year, but throughout the season and throughout his career, he has not been winning you any championships, and he's been drafted in there even higher than this. And he's consistently been one of like the worst picks, whether that's his fault or not. Obviously, it's been a lot of situational stuff. So I'm not saying he's gonna do that again. Particularly, I think this is a more justified ADP if he just sticks where he is. Because I really think he was kind of just priced as if Jordan Tyson didn't exist. I mean, genuinely, right? Because
Right.
I mean that's a massive addition, right? I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of people's wide receiver one out of this class. To be going 30 overall, I mean, I don't think if he had those last 4 games, he'd be going anywhere. When I say anywhere, I mean he'd probably be going around later or something. At least if he didn't have that final breakout. So basically, I don't want to see Olave go up any higher personally. I think his ADP was already pretty high, despite being a good player. So, I think 30 overall, I'm kind of lukewarm on that. I obviously consider taking him because he's a very good player, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm getting some huge edge, even with Jordan Tyson out for some time.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm like pounding the table for Olave now, but I think the reason that you could be a little bit more intrigued by him in that third round 306 kind of price tag, if he stays there, is the fact that I mean, it does feel like there's kind of a teardrop off there into that third round. You know what I mean? Like it seems like most of those like really elite players are gone, obviously, and
Yeah,
so
it's
there's
really
kind of this
flat.
drop off, and it's kind of like, all right, you're kind of looking around trying to figure out like what you're going to take in that third round there. So I think Olave is just about as good a pick as anybody in that round.
Yeah, I think that's why I like don't love Olave because it's such a flat tier that I don't
Right.
want to pick anyone. You know what I mean? Like truly, that's the best way to put it. It's not even like against him. It's just that like you have Garrett Wilson sometimes going at like 501. It's like, well, what's the
Oh
Garrett
wow.
Wilson has been like a better player every year through his career, minus the last like 4 games where a lot, and it's just
Right.
because Garrett Wilson didn't get to play. I mean, he had 4 wide receiver 1 finishes in 5 weeks last year, so that's more like my anti Olave thing is just like the
Hmm.
other stuff. But again, you can't like trade around on your board. Most people probably can't trade around the redraft
Right.
board. You got to kind of draft it how it is. I'm just laying my case for at least caution because I do think it was already priced in that like Tyson didn't exist for whatever reason on Olave. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Tyson though. Let's move on to our next riser, Jonathan Brooks, obviously we got news that Chuba is going to be out week to week. It basically sounds like he's going to be good to go week 1, but gives
Hmm.
Chuba, some room to some wiggle space here to take over maybe a better role earlier on. At least so that's what people are thinking. So sleeper ADP is not going to be reflective. Just any ADP on any platform is not going to be reflective of where he's really being drafted. I just want to clear that up. He's at 123 ADP right now. Now, as these drafts are going, ADPs update. I've already seen like Bucky Irving be a massive mover on sleeper from like basically like round 2 to like he's now like ADP of like 39. So we're starting to see these ADP shift. Brooks though, that puts him in round 10. Like you probably need to draft him at like round 6 or 7 right now. Probably at like the latest. I mean, you're just the running back market right now. Are people going to be drafting Tony Pollard and J.K. Dobbins over him? I don't think so. So, unless you're like in a very, very, very casual league, even then, I still think Jonathan Brooks is not like he's just such an obvious guy right now. So Brooks off the 2 ACLs, Dan, and let's just say right now that you're in a league where obviously you want to draft him if he's closer to his ADP, but let's say for our viewers here to help them out, they're in a league where people obviously are not dumb and are going to draft Jonathan Brooks
Yeah.
in round 6 or whatever. What
Yeah.
do you think of that ADP at this point for Jonathan Brooks?
I still don't think it's horrible. I mean, I can understand someone being more hesitant to being on Brooks now because like now like the cat's fully out of the bag. I mean, there was already like a good amount of hype on him this offseason, and then now you add the Hubbard injury. So you would think like the logical conclusion would be, okay, now he's going to get overdrafted, and you missed the window to get the good value on him, and that could certainly be true. But at the same time, I still very much like Jonathan Brooks just as a player and believe in his upside. So you're still getting potentially a team's RB1. I think a player that could work himself into a workhorse role, and you're still potentially getting him like in round 5, round 6. I mean, if he turns out to be what we thought he was going to be when the Panthers drafted him in the NFL draft very highly, that could still be an incredible value, I mean, especially, that's kind of like right in that running back dead zone kind of area. There usually aren't a lot of hits at running back historically there. There are certainly some exceptions, though. And I definitely think Jonathan Brooks could be one of those exceptions. So I'm still willing to consider him there. I'd have to see exactly like what players are on the board and everything like
Yeah.
that. But I still think he's pretty interesting, especially if you could get him round 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree and disagree at the same time because I'm interested in him as a player. I'm interested to see, just again if his ADP is not in round 6, or if he's not in round 6 in your draft, once you're in that round 7, round 8, I think you guys, the viewers definitely should be considering and like keeping a very close eye on and taking him. I don't know that I want to take him in round 6 though, for a couple reasons. Number one, if you've been watching content here on the Sleeper channel, I've been just telling you guys, like, do not be drafting running backs on, like, basically these dead zones. Like, there is a dead zone this year. Maybe a little, I don't know. I mean, it's still a pretty conventional dead zone, I suppose. Kind of like, I would say somewhere in between that round 5, maybe late round 5, round 6 area. It's like you got some disgusting names there. And basically just because volume. And with Brooks, I don't really care that we haven't seen anything. It's just like, he is coming off, like, the double ACL, whatever. Like, that's not like a great thing. Obviously, it might be priced in, but like, I mean, look, Chuba's not gonna disappear. Like, I think he's still gonna be ready to go for week 1 based off the reports. And even if he's not, even if he's back, like, I know that Chuba Hubbard got his like lunch money taken by Rico Dowdle, but Chuba Hubbard very clearly wasn't the same player. He was very clearly playing through injury and trying to keep his job, because he actually did get healthy like late down the stretch and started to take his job back, and also looked like phenomenal. There's actually reports I've seen also things on Twitter supporting that like he looked so much better than what he was playing injured. He looked very slow, like no explosiveness, and then there was like something maybe like week 14, week 15, he finally got that burst back. So I know that the fantasy production wasn't there. I'm very scared that there's going to be no production in this backfield for fantasy that's relevant, and we kind of see a repeat of like the second half of the season in 2025, if that makes sense. So I am very scared that you're kind of potentially kind of wasting a couple picks here. We'll talk about Chuba in a moment, because when you look at the receivers, like you have league-winning receivers in round 6. You also have Jadarian Price, who would be my guy here, and I think you're gonna have to take him potentially over Jadarian Price at this point, or right beside him. I would much rather take Jadarian Price, who has similar concerns but is not coming off the ACL, is a rookie, of course, and Jack Charbonnet probably is not going to be back before Chuba Hubbard, obviously. So I would rest my case that Jadarian Price should be the reason you're not drafting Jonathan Brooks in round 6.
Yeah, and I watched a BDGE video this morning, and they were talking about this exact situation. And I thought they brought up two amazing points that I wanted to pass on here. One is that Canales does have a history of just playing the best player at running back. And I think, Rico Dowdle last season was a good example of that, even though, like, going into the season, Chuba was the clear starter. And I know you could argue the injury and everything like that, but, like, when Dowdle got hot, Canales just rode him. So if Brooks is just clearly the superior running back to Chuba Hubbard, which I think is the case, I think Canales is just going to go with him. So I think that history is encouraging. And the second point that they brought up is that a lot could be contingent upon whether Chuba actually returns for week 1. Like, if he does, I could see him being like, the 1A to start the season. But if Chuba has any kind of setback, or if he's behind his, timeline and recovering from the injury, and he isn't quite ready for week 1, and so, Brooks becomes the starter week 1 and plays really well, then there's probably just like, no putting the genie back in the bottle at that point. So I think that could be like a huge, like, pivot point that kind of determines how this backfield goes, especially early in the season. Because, like, otherwise, if Chuba is back in time for week 1 and Brooks kind of has to, like, win the job, like, as the season goes on, maybe it's not until, like, the second half of the season where Brooks, like, really runs away with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly my hesitation, right? Saying the round 6 thing. Like, I don't want to draft a guy in round 6 when there's league-winning wide receivers, there's elite quarterbacks, elite tight end potentially if you want that. I just don't want to take that when I'm not 100% sure if Chuba is back. I do think Chuba, like, team captain kind of guy, like, I think he's gonna be a guy that's like gonna be really hard to, like, completely put away. He's just gonna be that really annoying guy for fantasy. Let's talk about Chuba quickly here now as, like, a follower. Obviously, he's getting hurt. He was very relevant in drafts. I think, like, long story short, like, not really interested in Chuba, like, either. I mean, he's had some some success in fantasy, but like I was saying, I'm pretty worried that this just ends up a backfield where, yeah, maybe one guy is a slight winner, but it's not enough for me to, like, want to burn a pick here. I would far rather go, it's not really about, oh, you could have, all these players have an expected, like, points per game when you draft them in round 6, right? Let's say it's, I don't know, 11 and a half points or something like that, right? Okay, if Chuba scores 12 and a half, am I going to be mad at myself? Like, no, I'm not going to be, or Brooks does, right? I want to get the receiver here that I think could score, like 16 points per game or something like that. There's guys like Christian Watson going here, who obviously, yeah, he's got some questions too, but I think he's an extremely high upside player. I think there's better areas to go. So for me, just, like, basically long story short, I don't really want this Panthers backfield unless you can get Chuba Hubbard closer to his ADP, outside of round 6, of course.
Yeah, way outside of that. Yeah, I can promise you Chuba Hubbard is not winning you your fantasy league this year. So the only scenario in which I see that Chuba Hubbard would make sense for my fantasy team is if I went 0 running back.
Yeah.
And, ideally I'm not going 0 running back, but of course there always could be a scenario where you got to get forced into it based on where you're drafting and how the board goes. So yeah, if you go 0 running back, yeah, and Chuba falls a bunch, maybe even in, like, I don't know, double-digit rounds or close to it. Yeah, I could see him being a target and, like, fitting your team build, but otherwise, no, thank you.
He would have to fall a long way, and I like how you said it. Like, I can assure you, Chuba Hubbard is not. There are so many players like that, like, every year. I remember, like, last year, I couldn't understand why. Like, again, it has nothing to do with the players. I know that Cortland Sutton actually had a decent year, but Cortland Sutton and Calvin Ridley were, like, so high, like, round, like, 5 picks last year. I'm like, what are we, like, hoping? Like, maybe, again, maybe they can, like, come close to paying that off, but those guys sure as hell are not winning your league. That's probably, like, the best advice we can give to anyone is, like, don't draft these, like, I don't even, like, in the mid round, don't just, like, draft these guys that have never won you a league.
Yeah.
There's certain, what is the route for Chuba Hubbard to be, to kill your ADP? There's so many high upside players here. I think we beat that one to death, but just to ensure no one is drafting Chuba Hubbard at his current
Yes.
ADP.
Yeah.
It's pretty important.
PSA.
Um, let's move on to a guy that we're both very excited about, especially you, Dan. Parker Washington. We're going to be a riser. You know, I mean, he's just been a riser in general, like throughout this entire offseason, end of last season, and then now we're getting a report from a beat reporter. I don't really care about, honestly, like beat reporter like opinions and stuff like that. Maybe I'll look more deep into it because I actually didn't have time to like read on the article. Basically the clickbait kind of headline was like, Parker Washington like officially the wide receiver one or something. So I mean, is that really news? I don't know, but I would say it's probably confirming our priors. So
Oh yeah.
let's talk about Parker Washington. ADP of 78 right now, which I think is much better on like more accurate on ESPN than on your sleeper than your ESPN and Yahoo leagues. Those are just, I think I saw one that has him like pick 100. Like that's not gonna happen unless again no one is reading any kind of fantasy football news. So at pick 78, that puts them in the middle of round 6 as well, similar to where Tyson was getting drafted pre-injury. What do you do with Parker Washington there, Dan?
I'm still drafting him. Yeah, I'm all in on him. I mean, everything that we've read. I mean, yeah, like the hype's been out of control. I mean, yeah, basically this guy never has a bad practice, and but jokes aside, like from everything I read, he's been Trevor Lawrence's number one, like most targeted receiver throughout training camp, and I mean, we just know Trevor Lawrence. That shouldn't come as a surprise because we know Trevor Lawrence's history, that he loves to throw to players in the middle of the field. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, like those have been the fantasy relevant pass catchers, even league winners at times during Trevor Lawrence's career. He doesn't like to throw to the outside receivers as much. So it certainly isn't surprising, but probably the most encouraging thing or report that I've read is that Parker Washington is going to be playing in 2 wide receiver sets. Like this isn't going to be like a Josh Downs or, Jaden Reed kind of situation from previous years, at least based on what I've read. I mean, he's going to be playing the vast majority of snaps. He's going to be on the field. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to crush it. So, yeah, this ADP is not too high for me. Yeah, I'm absolutely drafting him there. And if he even gets a little higher, like, I might even be drafting him a little earlier. But I'm definitely chasing him up the board and wanting to stay ahead of the ADP, even at this point.
Yeah, if you're watching this as a more of a casual viewer, I know pick 78 will sound really high. It'll also sound like what's the difference between him and Chuba Hubbard? At least I've seen Chuba Hubbard, have a really good season. This is one of those ones where like basically Parker Washington, his per route splits last year were top of the league post bye, and the reason it's important post bye is because that's when basically they started using him. He really wasn't. It was just a very small role player. Like Diami Brown was in there. I know that you could question like why wasn't he winning the job over Diami Brown? Valid, but that is also very precedent of why he's going a pick 78, where like basically what he did at the end of last year should be like a 1-2 turn pick. I mean that's just like how good he was. Everything was on par with Justin Jefferson. In fact, even outproduced or just like outperformed Justin Jefferson in some splits. Over the course of the season, by the way, mind you, not even if you go in the second half of the season, he could completely obliterated a player like Jefferson. So I think at pick 78, this is one of those ones where a lot of people are going to be scared to do because they don't want to look like an idiot. But I think this is one of those ones where you fire a shot, absolutely. And if you're in a smart draft, you're going to have to take him higher than this. And I'm willing to do it. There is a cutoff point, though, where, we were talking pre-stream about basically people like taking them, like round 4. That's going to be tough for me because there's just so many good receivers there where I'm like, okay, I think I'm just getting too cute here. Like, I'll just wait till a draft. Especially if you're doing multiple drafts, I don't need to take Parker Washington in round 4 if people are really high on him in one. I'll let them have him in that one. I'll get him in the round 5, round 6, spot there because I think round 4 is a very valuable round. Like I was mentioning, like I've seen Garrett Wilson basically going every single time at like the late 4th. Guys like that, Ted, all these like awesome, phenomenal players that I got like basically no questions about their role or how talented they are. Obviously, it's a little ambiguous to Parker Washington, despite thinking he's awesome. So, anything to add to Parker Washington? I think basically our final message here is just like basically just draft him ahead of ADP, but within reason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying from a portfolio approach, but let's just try to keep in mind that like everyone out there doesn't play in so many leagues like you and I do.
It still would go for one league. Like if I was just in one league, I would not draft Parker Washington in round 4 at all.
I mean, I would be willing to. I mean, I'll put that out there. Again, like I'm not saying you should have to. Like you probably won't.
Yeah.
We'll see how much his ADP continues to rise. But if you absolutely had to, I mean, I'd have zero issue with it. I mean, I think he could easily outscore Ted McMillan this season.
No, yeah, look, I agree with that. I think for the viewer, like the reason I would say there's no chance I'm doing it is Ted McMillan or Garrett Wilson. Are those guys going to be there in round 6? They're not going to be there in round 6. You know who could be there in round 6? Parker Washington.
Right.
I
Yeah.
want to win that game. It's just getting too cute to me to like take them way, way ahead,
Yeah.
unless you like for some reason know like everyone in your list, somebody's gone 412. I got to take him at 411. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would be like the only scenario where I think you could justify it. And I think that's just going to be so rare. So that's why I'm saying like.
Yeah, generally, yeah, I agree with you.
Be careful. I just don't think it's necessary, basically. But I get what you mean. Like
it probably isn't.
That's good for the viewer to understand, though. That like you're so high that if you had to take him there,
yeah,
that you
but
consider
most likely
taking him.
You don't have to.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yeah,
that gives
don't
you.
Do it if you don't have to. Like play the ADP game.
Yeah. So that just shows the viewer that like at pick 78, that might sound expensive, but like Dan, yeah, you're willing to take him around 4. So like that shows just how good of a value he is at current ADP. Let's move on to Luther Burden, who is going in round 4, pick 49. Obviously, he's a very controversial guy as well, kind of similar to Parker Washington. People haven't seen it other than a week. All the sharps and everything will combat that by saying he's got like the 3rd best all-time rookie yards per route run. I think both sides, funny enough, do have like pretty valid points, but ultimately I think Luther Burden's a very good player and a very, very good offense. And the reason I was buying him at the end of last season is because he just got hurt. We would have seen more than 1 week had he not gotten hurt. I think it was week, I don't know, maybe like around like 12, 13. He was literally breaking out. He had like 6 catches in the first half or something along those lines before getting hurt. So I would say, basically short story, at this ADP, I don't know I want to take him though, despite being basically a massive Burden truther. I would kind of say it's a similar thing to Chris Olave in terms of you do need to take him in the like kind of I don't know, when you're looking at this big group of receivers. Do I want to take an injured Luther Burden over Garrett Wilson, the guys that kind of go at the back? I don't know, but what I will say is if these ADPs shift by the time we get to draft season, and Luther Burden is now the guy being drafted at the 412 501, okay, like I'll draft him in that case. I don't want to take an injured good player over like a healthy good player when I don't need to, if that makes sense. Because like what you're saying, you want a player that's actually going to play and start hot for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I would absolutely prefer Garrett Wilson. I mean, even like Parker Washington. I mean, even when all those receivers are healthy, like any one of them could easily outscore the other. So yeah, if one of them just suffered an injury that's kind of making them week to week and potentially even putting like their week 1 availability in question, that's absolutely going to be a tiebreaker for me. So yeah, I agree. Like his ADP would have to fall for really me to become interested.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to add too much to that. It's just like really good player. I mean, so a lot of people might just be out on him in general. I think there's like a pretty big split of people loving him, people hating him. So it makes it easy for the guys that don't like him. They can basically just have him off their board. But for the people that do, again, I think his ADP just in general was pretty good. I know, there's obviously risk and projection when you haven't seen it, or at least perceived. But yeah, if he doesn't shift, don't need to get pretty, I suppose. Because by the time he's back and fully healthy, you might be 0-3 or whatever. I mean, we see that every year. So, all right, let's move on to Cam Skattebo, our riser. Basically, the only reason he's going to be a riser is because he's now playing. People have seen him on the field. We saw him stiff arm someone in preseason. This is just how things go for a player coming off injury. We just see someone on the field now, someone that people love, Skattebo. His ADP is absolutely going to rise. Obviously some people, including us, have been very concerned about the injury. And we'll get in that in a second here. But yeah, ADP of 43. So that puts him in like the 3-4 turn. I suppose like early 4th. I do think you need to take him a little earlier than that right now. And this will be kind of my bold prediction. I kind of think he's gonna basically be like an early 3rd, consensus by the time we get to the draft season. Like I think he's gonna get early to mid 3rd. I think he's not too far off there. In some drafts he will go there. But the reason I say that is because now we have Breece Hall who's injured. We had Jeremiah Love. Like someone needs to get taken there. Of course there's like Kyron and Javonte. I don't know that like everyone's a big fan of them. So I do think Scatabo is someone that everyone can like universally agree on and like will go up there. Let's talk about him though. Basically, I'll just call it anywhere in this round 3, but early to late. Again, we were kind of calling it flat, anyways. Where are you at on Scatabo here, Dan?
I will own 0 Cam Scatabo if you are correct, Blake. I'm drafting him nowhere near there. To be clear, I'm not worried about the split of snaps between like him and Tracy and Singletary. I mean, maybe Tracy could be a little more of a factor like early in the season if like Scatabo isn't 100% himself. But I mean, I'm not like too worried about that. I mean, Tracy specifically. I mean, I guess what I'm more worried about is the combination of like Scatabo not being like 100% himself, and also, I mean, it just seems like way too early to take a guy coming off like that major of an injury. I just like don't totally understand it. I mean, I guess it's just a combination of the fact that he was awesome last season, and the fact that everyone just loves Cam Scatabo. I mean, who doesn't love Cam Scatabo, right? So I understand it, but yeah, I just don't think he'll be a good value picking him that early.
We love him, but we need to be realistic about what to expect at this ADP. And look, just because we saw him take a couple snaps, stiff arm a guy, yeah, he didn't lose his ability to stiff arm people. We know that, but he's an explosive player. I know he's not the fastest player, but he's an explosive player. I don't think we just like magically have confirmation of that now. Off a couple of snaps, he didn't look very explosive to me. But again, I'm not trying to make any definitive, whatever, like assumption here based off what we saw. I'm just saying, I'm still worried about the injury. Again, we've referenced on this channel multiple times, basically, Dan, your father, as a medical doctor, saying this is something where it's going to take at least mid-season for him to get, really back to health at least. And a lot of the times in, previous cases on star players that have gotten there, it's basically like almost ended like a lot of guys' like careers. Like it's the last time we saw them be a peak was Papriot, Cooper Kupp, Tony Pollard, Mark Andrews. I know Scatabo's younger than them, but it's just like this is such a high ADP. Like I just don't think. I mean, if you take him as your RB2 or RB1 even, and you're like relying on him, I don't think that's a smart choice when you can just go anywhere else. I do think there's a chance like maybe again he's fully healthy by the fantasy playoffs, and at that point we're eating dirt if he's good and you made playoffs. But again, I think that's a question of like if you make playoffs with him when there's just such good players around there.
Yeah. And of course, like there's always a scenario in which like Scatabo is just like the superhuman that, defies all like logic and science and, beats this injury timeline, more than like the average person out there. Like that's absolutely possible. I mean, we've seen that before. I mean, like look at like Adrian Peterson that year. He came off of that torn ACL and then like ran for 2,000 yards. Like who the heck would see that coming? So, Adrian Peterson just like wasn't human. So yeah, could Scatabo like fit in that kind of mold? Like absolutely. Like you never know, but it would be the exception to the rule. Like people are drafting Scatabo as if like you're just getting that exact player pretty much like he was last season, and it doesn't seem like any of the health risk or just him not being his 100% fully effective self is being priced in whatsoever.
Yeah, good way to put it. Like I don't think it's very priced. You could argue it's very very little price in. I think the risk is much greater than what it's being perceived as right now. And I think the best way to put it, you kind of just alluded to it, was, there's a very small chance or, there's some chance that, maybe, he ignores it and he is, phenomenal as a league winner. But, like, there's other players to draft as well that probably have a greater chance of achieving that. Again, maybe Malik Neighbors. I mean, he's really in the same ADP right now. There's guys like that where I would rather bet on. Basically, a long story short, Dan, Scatabo, there is a chance that he's the correct pick. We're gonna have to take him, but I think other players you can just lean on that just have better chances. I'm not gonna worry about them coming off an injury, and they're also obviously phenomenally talented going around 3 as well. So yeah, unfortunately, we love Scatabo, but are gonna be off him. And obviously, if he gets to a slow start, maybe we're considering trading for him or something in season, for a cheaper cost.
Yeah, and also Judkins is going like 2 rounds later, and I actually think he even better fits the mold of someone that would beat his injury timeline personally.
Yeah. Before we move on, yeah, it's funny. Judkins, I do not like him in Dynasty, but funny enough, in redraft, like it sounds like people are like with me because he doesn't go very high. So like I could actually get behind that. I don't think he's like the worst pick in the world because he goes like round 5. Like that's not very high for
Yeah, hell yeah, yeah. I
a
love
running back
Judkins
this
around
year.
5.
Yeah, let's move on to our next faller in Brees Hall, who actually goes the same spot. Probably have to be picking between him and Scatabo. He basically Brees Hall. It says his ADP is 32, but I was more seeing 2-3 turn as his real, maybe early third as his real ADP. At least in the more competitive leagues. So keep note of that for you guys that are drafting. That's where the pros were taking him, and obviously maybe we do see him actually kind of fall to this real 32, overall ADP after he falls today with right before we recorded here, groin injury. We don't know too much, so obviously we probably shouldn't waste too much time speculating on like the time missed and stuff. I mean, really, like what it sounds like, we just saw a couple guys like Burden, and there was someone else that went down with a groin, and it's like, I completely forget who it was, and another big player. It sounds like it's a lingering thing. It might be, multiple weeks, maybe make him a little questionable for week 1. Uh, Not exactly what you want to be drafting, again, in round 3. I will say though, like it's the kind of injury where I don't know. I'm just gonna assume like if he's fully healthy, ready to go for week 1, like he's probably like closer to 100% than a Scatabo type guy, where we're like really concerned about his like ankle blowing up or like had blown up. So with Brees Hall, I was pretty hesitant on his early third, despite loving Brees Hall, but honestly, I might almost be like more interested in him if his ADP falls to back at round 3. I mean, again, just running backs are hard to come by this year, so. What do you
Mhm.
think, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I get nervous like anyone else, like drafting a running back that gets an injury right before the season. I guess the question is, yeah, if he falls to like the back end of round 3, is that fully pricing it in enough? I mean, he doesn't even fall like a full round. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think you could question that a little bit. So I can't say like, yeah, in the back of round 3, like he'd be like this huge target for me. I think he'd have to fall a little bit more for me personally, for my comfort level. But I'm hoping it's nothing.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we have to stay tuned to. But it definitely gives you a little more caution. I definitely certainly wouldn't be drafting him where we have been.
Yeah, a lot of guys are going to need a running back at that kind of 3-4 turn area. So I
Mm-hmm.
do think he might kind of just. I think that's kind of what Scatabo was going there. You just kind of need a running back there.
Mm-hmm.
So at least something to consider. But I think it maybe basically, like, long story short, if we were just like not concerned about his health going into the season and his ADP is just like fallen, like I think that would be a much more like realistic spot for like Brees Hall to go, just given everything the past couple seasons. I just still think he's a phenomenal player. I just think there's like a little more risk baked in, maybe than that early third was suggesting, before. So that's actually been a player I've been pretty surprised about his ADP because I've generally been like ahead of market on Brees Hall, but I still like have not been drafting him in redraft terms. Like obviously in Dynasty we still want him; he's a great back, but like in redraft I've had such a hard time with the Jets, and like it's still the same way for me this year. So keep an eye on his ADP. Obviously we'll make some more videos as we go on, updating our opinion because it's hard to know right now. But just reporting on Brees Hall here while, of course, we just get this news. Let's move on to Stribling, big riser. Obviously, he's been a huge talking point here. Right now, ADP 174. We did our first redraft, Dan, and it felt a little silly doing it, but I took Stribling at the end of the last pick of the draft. And we were only like 5 bench spots, so you could have been a lot of things I suppose to pick there, but I just kind of was figuring. I was even thinking about like Cyrus Allen, just like you want to kind of take a shot at a guy that could rise and maybe be going higher than he was at the time. Obviously, great preseason show out. I do question if he's like still good at football or not, like truly good. But I don't really like care because it's like redraft, and I think he's a guy that basically, long story short, you should do the same thing if you can, and you should just get him in the last round of like every draft right now. I think it's going to be pretty much possible, but closer you get to the season, obviously harder to do.
Yeah, I thought Stribling looked awesome in that preseason game. He made a great sideline catch where he had to like twist his body to get it. He had another great, contested catch where he did a great job hanging onto the ball. There was another sideline catch too, where I feel like most receivers just would have gone out of bounds, and he like spun back inbounds and got some extra yardage. So really thought he looked awesome. He did have a drop pass in the game, but okay, not the end of the world. But yeah, I was impressed with him. So yeah, like his stock is definitely on the rise here. And yeah, I mean, I think he's a pretty interesting kind of, lottery ticket, to get late in redraft drafts. I think the only thing to be still a little cautious of is typically the 49ers don't use a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. And I would still expect Mike Evans and Deebo Samuel to be like the 2 main starters week 1 and even like early in the season. So like how many snaps do we really expect like Stribling to be playing early in the season? Like maybe like 50%, maybe 60%, something like that. He's probably not going to be fantasy relevant in those games. If that's the case, he's probably going to need to work his way into that like number 2 receiver. How long does that take to happen? And can you afford to roster a player, stash away a player on your bench who's not scoring enough points if like the benches are shallow? So those are the questions you kind of have to weigh. So I don't think we should get like too carried away and expect him to be like, a guy you can start week 1 or even necessarily early in the season, but you never know. It's always possible. And he certainly has a lot of upside, as the season goes along. So definitely a very interesting player.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said it well. Just don't expect the world, especially early. Again, like I'm not even 100% sure that he's like actually like truly like a GOAT football player like it's being made out to be. He's very athletic and talented. And also I made a sleeper on this whatever, like a sleeper thing before the draft. Like I was like, keep an eye on John Stribling. I think people are whatever, he's gonna get drafted way higher. But even me putting him on the sleeper short was I don't know that he's like actually a 201 caliber player. He could just be Jonathan Mingo truly still, but I don't think it matters for redraft. I think you should roster him, hold on to him as long as possible. The stub situation's there. We know how good of a situation is. Basically, this is the kind of shot you want to take. Just kind of swing you want. I think in a lot of the late rounds of your draft, you kind of want to be thinking who could be one of the hottest waiver wire pickups, and that was kind of my thinking of drafting him in the final round. I think he could be one of the hottest pickups early in the season, so keep an eye out for him, and yeah, just take some swings if you can. So let's move on to our final faller, Jeremiah Love. Obviously, another running back injured at the 2-3 turn. I mean, I suppose it's an expensive price, but compared to Ashton Genty and Bijan, I mean, really way cheaper than those guys have been in the exact same similar situation. Literally Tyler Algier behind him, or in the backfield with him, similar to Bijan, and bad offensive situation. So I didn't really know what to do with him at ADP for talent-wise. Very good, but obviously some questions about will he, be a league winner? Will he pay off? I really think there's a chance he's going to be slipping down the board with a high ankle sprain right now. Let's just say he gets to the 3-4 turn, Dan. He's not too far off of that. I just don't see him like falling further than that, to be fair, or to be honest. Are you going to be interested in him at the 3-4 turn at all?
I don't think so, honestly. I mean, this is the last thing you want to hear about your running back before the season, a high ankle sprain. I mean, okay, sure. Like, yeah, he could, have a season-ending injury. So I guess that would be worse. But, yeah, high ankle sprain is brutal. So, yeah, I mean, I think this could greatly hinder his season. Yeah, I mean, it's just like he might not even be available week 1 for all we know. Then once he does come back, I mean, that's something that could always get, like, re-aggravated and – they're also like they could be like kind of more cautious with them early on, even more than they were planning on being, just because like they want to take it easy on him coming back from the injury and everything. So it really just kind of I don't know what the right metaphor is, but it's just a big buzzkill for Jeremiah Love, and we love him as a player. The upside's enormous, and theoretically it still is. I just think it's less likely to be achieved now, and if it is achieved, it's going to be later in the season than it probably otherwise would have been. So I'm pretty skeptical at this point. And yeah, he's definitely not someone I'm circling on my draft boards as a target.
Yeah, I was questioning it before. I could talk myself into him being such a good pick and such a bad pick at the same time. But what I'll say, I'm still going to be interested in him personally, especially if we get him back at that 3-4 turn. That's going to be very important. We need more information here to say anything definitive, or at least in my opinion, because if we do get information, like basically, he'll be playing week 1, Here's what I'll say. Again, we don't want a guy that's gonna start slow, and you were like alluding to that why you might want to draft him. But like that's kind of the point of why you're getting Jeremiah Love where you are. Like we expected him to start slow anyways. He's a rookie running back, despite being fourth overall, or what was it, third overall? I mean, yeah, third overall. So like I mean, if I can eat a few weeks and kind of make that risk and then just draft it, you have to construct around that with your team, right? Maybe you go with a literal triple running back start and you're looking for three RB1s by the time we're at the end of the season. I do think he could be an attractive target at that price, especially if it was like fourth round, early fourth. But you do need to be very cautious. I will say that, and I want more information. So that again, another player that we're gonna have to talk about more as we get closer to draft season and keep an eye on. But I wouldn't completely write him off personally because again, my expectations are you're not drafting him for the first especially like month or 2 months. You're getting them because you want to have like a complete league winner in round 3 or I guess 4 now potentially.
Yeah, but the problem with that argument is like those are the same people that were saying to draft like Jahmyr Gibbs in like round 5 his rookie season. And yeah, like Jahmyr Gibbs was great down the stretch as a rookie, but it took a while to get there. And I feel like most people that drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in round 5 as a rookie didn't make the playoffs because like their season started like pretty slow. So
yeah,
I really put such a high premium on starting the season hot. I think that's everything in redraft. Personally, that's my philosophy. And Blake, here's an interesting one: more fantasy points per game this year, Jeremiah Love or Quinshawn Judkins?
Oh, I'll go Love easily. Yeah.
I'll take Judkins. Put it on the board. We just made another bet.
Yeah. I'll go Love even with the ankle.
Yeah.
I
mean, Blake and I, we have like a running list of bets here. We might even make a video on it at some point. And yeah, we're still trying to come up with like a good reward and maybe even punishment for the loser. So if you have any ideas, put those in the comments.
Yeah. So that covers our risers and fallers here. We're back in grind mode. We've been very busy, but we're gonna be coming out with content. I mean, basically daily, including the shorts here. So make sure you guys are sub for that. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I mean we're on what we're at. We're on 600 something subs. We're on pace for 1K. That's the next goal. So help us get there, and we'll certainly be pumping out content for you guys.
Yeah, and I'm recording this from Austin, Texas. I was just at the Flock League meetup, so we'll definitely have some fun content coming. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subbed.
Yeah, sub for that insider, bonus seed.
Yeah.
Let me fill up 52. Yeah, come for all the advice and make sure you guys sub for that bonus Flock, insider.
Behind the
meetup.
Yes.
No, that's some good stuff to look forward to. Thanks for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and peace.